Welcome back, dear friends. It's a couple of days before Christmas 2022, having a little bit of a break from the Ukulele Playing Machine because my poor old 3D printer stopped working. It may be partly due to the fact that I haven't maintained it at all or cleaned it or anything for what is it? It's about 3 or 4 years. It must have printed thousands and thousands of hours, but it finally jammed up. Let me show you why, because I found out some fascinating things about 3D printers, having finally read something, not having ever bothered with instructions or anything, obviously. This is what happened. I was trying to print one of these, which is one of the motorised gauge things, enclosures, and it started off perfectly. Printed the base, and then did this strange looking stuff. And I have to say, a couple of weeks prior to that, I had actually, I found it had jammed up again. The glue, the filament, this filament wasn't coming through the nozzle. Beep, 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 beep. First time I've taken that off. So I cleaned it up, pulled the old filament out, cut the end off, pushed it through. It seemed to be working, so just left to get on with it. And I also took the precaution of actually cleaning up all the bits. This bit runs on. They've all got wheels. Where's a wheel? Hang on a minute. Well, there's a wheel. So there's 3 wheels on there. 1, 2, 3. Very nicely, one of them is set on an offset shaft, like I use for the well, a couple of my machines to adjust things. So it's really nice to adjust, and the wheels have got bearings in the middle, so they turn beautifully. And at this end, you can see them run up and down. So I cleaned all that up, adjusted the base again, which you have. Oh, and that's right, the base is on wheels as well. Here's one of the base wheels. So adjusted all of those, got it all nicely set up and cleaned up, but again, like I say, it stopped working. So I actually read something, brilliant website about how to fix these Creality Ender Pro machines, 3D printers. This is the printing head that heats up and melts the filament. What it consists of is a print head with a 0.4mm hole in it that screws into the heating block. This is called the heating block, and there's the nozzle screws into there. There's a tube that comes up here, and that sits inside basically a heatsink. I always wondered what this was all about. So you've got a heatsink at the top, you've got a pipe up the middle, you've got the heating block at the bottom, the nozzle, and the filament travels through PTFE pipe tube. It's PTFE because it has a very high melting point, and that fits down and delivers the filament into the nozzle. Now, I didn't know what this was made up of, but I did know it was completely jammed up with stuff. And having read the instructions, the first one was, well, the end of the tube's probably melted, so it was a little bit with all the heat and everything. So I chopped that off nice and flat, tried to push it through, which is another action, couldn't get it through. So in the end, after faffing and farting around, take it all to bits, partly to see how it works. And how it works is, there's an hole in this. In fact, there's 2 holes. There's a hole there, big hole, and there's a little hole. And what goes in there is the heating element cartridge and a thermistor, which is a temperature sensor. Isn't that amazing? And you can, all these parts you can buy individually, really cheap because they make so many of them. It's fascinating. So that heater basically heats up the block to the level that you've set in the Ender's controls, 215 degrees centigrade, I think, for PLA. That was what I was recommending with the PLA Plus anyway. And then the thermistor is monitoring that all the time. When it reaches the right temperature, the thermistor tells it to switch this off. And if it gets too cool with a bit of hysteresis, so it's not always sort of on and off all the time, it switches it back on. And that's what keeps the block at the right temperature. Now, I have often wondered why there are 2 fans in the head of this 3D printer, and lots of 3D printers. One of them is, well, in fact, this one directs all the air downwards through a little slot to cool the filament as it's actually been printed, as it's been extruded onto the rest of the existing print. So that lets it cool quickly, so it solidifies. This fan simply, not simply, but effectively cools down this bit, because the whole thing is about keeping the filament really cool as possible, until it leaves the pipe that sticks down in here, which should stick down touching the end of the nozzle. So the idea is to keep the filament really cold, well, cool, not melted, until the actual point at which, what am I picking up? I can't even see, here we are, at which it enters here, and this is all bunged up obviously. And then this is really hot, 215 degrees centigrade. That is really cool, to stop the filament from melting too soon, because if it does and it can't get extruded out of this hole, it expands and clogs everything up. So that's why there's two fans and all this stuff, and there's a shroud, a silicone rubber bit that goes around here, I assume for insulation, and that's the whole purpose of this. Absolutely fascinating. Now this pipe, because I've cut bits off it a couple of times, is now too short, so I've ordered some more, and I'm waiting for that to come later today. These are the little clips, the pipe clips, and again they'd seized up, so I've ordered a couple of them. I will get back to you when things arrive. I've got a nice little collection of interesting and exciting parts, but isn't that amazing? That's so clever. That's why you have two fans. One to cool the PLA before it reaches the nozzle, and the other one to cool the PLA once it's been extruded. Fabulous. Oh, by the way, no affiliation, as always. Who'd want to? I was recommended by the person I was talking to at the Steampunk event a few years ago, who recommended this particular 3D printer and talked to me about it. eSun PLA Plus. It's the one I always use, and I've been really impressed with it. I have used metallic filament made by other people, and I've noticed the difference. It doesn't give quite such a good finish, but unfortunately you can't get it in PLA Plus, probably the reason why. But it does produce really, really good prints repeatedly. And as I say, my 3D printer is 3-4 years old now, and this is the first time it's clogged up, and I'm sure that is due to this filament. And in fact, when I've been using things like this brass metallic filament in the past, which isn't the good quality, well, it is, it's the highest quality I can get, but it's not the plus version, it has actually clogged up a couple of times, and I've had to pull the pipe out and fiddle around to unclog it. So again, I can recommend wholeheartedly the eSun PLA Plus. Absolutely brilliant stuff. Oh, the air's gone in this bag. You may be asking, why bags? Well, because it absorbs moisture, I believe, and then slowly degrades, it's important to try and keep it as dry as possible. It absorbs moisture, that's right. So you can get these bags, which are brilliant, and they come with a little vacuum pump. So when you're not using your filament, you can put it in there with one of the little silica gel packets, and it even came with some sort of moisture sensing thing, and you suck all the air out. That has worked, but the air's leaked back into there, so I'll have to suck it out. Just, you know, these are inexpensive, these bags, and if it does make a difference, then great. I'll get back to you when I've got some new exciting tubes and things to show you. It's a couple of days later, and look what's arrived. I got the proper stuff from Creality, because because there are loads of companies selling copies or equivalent versions, and sometimes they're absolute rubbish, so I thought I'd get it from the proper place. So I've got a nice length of new tube for the PTFE pipe, and a few of the little rubber cup things, the boots that go over the print head to keep it warm, I assume, and a couple more of these, because if you remember these, not sure how well these work. I could never push this down and get the pipe out, it sort of stuck in. So a couple more of them. I will get everything together. Right, I've got all that gunk cleaned out now. Oops. The pipe pushes all the way through, which is what it's meant to do. The idea being that you can seat this end really up firmly against the bit of the nozzle, so that no filament can squeeze between the two. Let's get all this fixed together and I'll show you what I mean. Right, I've got the first two bits back together. Realised, having funnied around a little bit, that in fact that screws in all the way, the nozzle, and because this is threaded all the way through, the hot bit, this threaded part then doesn't go quite as far in, and the space between these two is proper, and you can tighten everything up and it's all perpendicular. There we are, got that screwed back on. There's the rubber boot over it, and the heating element cartridge just pushed in, tighten that, and the thermistor next to it. Lovely. I'll get the fans back on and then warm it up and see what happens. I've got that back together, a lovely new pipe on. One of the top tips that they gave on that lovely website was when you come to put this in, attach the PTFE tube, undo the little socket fitting a whole turn, a full turn, push this firmly home, then tighten it back up fully tight, and that will ensure that the end of this pipe pushes really firmly against the nozzle. Now to try and push some filament through by hand and see what happens. Ooh, it's coming through, brilliant. So that means it's all clear. Excellent. I'll get it printing. Thankfully, I just remembered before I set it to print that obviously, having fiddled around with this, I needed to set it up again to the right height from the base, the offset thing. And there's a tool where it auto home, I think it's called, so it takes this the nozzle back to the beginning point, and then you switch the steppers off and slide a piece of paper underneath it, and then slide this forward, check again, or so you sort of do it that a couple of times round with a piece of paper, so it just slips underneath, and you adjust it with these wheels underneath. It's really nice and simple but very effective. So I've got that done, and it's now heating up, so very shortly hopefully it'll start printing. Any minute now it should start. It's reached the right temperature. The bed is 60 degrees and the nozzle is 215. Did I get it? Yes, here we go. The first thing is it goes to 0 with all the micro switches, which it's now done, and that's the Z up and down. And then it should start printing. Where's the filament? Here it is. It does a circular, well, it does an outline first of all before it actually starts printing, which is handy, as it ensures that the filament's coming through and everything. Well, I won't inflict the next 5 hours or 20 minutes on you. We'll get back to you when we have something to show for it, hopefully. Look! It worked! I've put it back in place and it's printed perfect thing again. I'm so pleased to have got it working again. Thanks very much for watching. Hope it was interesting. If you like this sort of thing, please do remember to click the like and subscribe buttons. Next time, finally it's getting on with the ukulele playing machine and getting Victoria the automaton to sing when I'm cleaning windows. I can't wait. It's so exciting. Thanks again.